provided that the exemptions are based on reasonable privacy concerns, exigent circumstances, or safety of law enforcement officers and personnel.
Right, but I'm saying, that's in conflict with the 181 law.
That is,
Second.
that's the 131 law.
I would appreciate it if we could just let Dan ask what he was saying.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, I'm just trying not to get too many questions and then lose track of
Okay, I understand.
what it is, if we could keep it to one question at a time so I can answer.
Well, essentially, it's one question. I was just making statements leading up to the
okay.
question, but the question is, well, again, it's more a statement that I need you to respond to, but your description about the 181 law, that you said that if something starts happening at a demonstration, then the officers turn on their camera, that makes sense for the people who are engaged in some kind of criminal activity, but that doesn't give them the right then to leave it on and continue to record just because because then that is guilt by association of everybody who's at that demonstration. So overall, the point is that these body cameras, by their nature, are in violation of that state statute because they're constantly collecting and maintaining information when there's no suspicion of criminal activity. So I'd like to know how you're planning to get around that state law.
Okay, there are 4 state laws that deal with body cams, and the one that talks about prohibited activation is ORS 133.741, which talks about exigent circumstances. The other one, the mandatory one, is when officers are required to turn it on, which deals with reasonable suspicion and probable cause, and that's 131.741. So there are a variety of different laws that deal with the different pieces and parts. It's not all in one. So if there's a problem with them conflicting, I guess that would be something we would need to take to the Oregon legislature.
Just as a, so I'm looking at the queue here. I've got myself, I've got Michelle, I've got Sharon, I've got Andrew. I know I also have a gentleman in the front. You did ask a question already, so I'm just prioritizing people who have not had a chance to speak. Okay, and then Adam. So, my question was just a question of the oversight of the data. You know, all this, all the videos and stuff like that. I know it was already stated that, you know, there's already going to be suspicion of how these videos are kept. And then there was the thought of, well, someone in your team's got to delete these videos. Is there an oversight of that or an audit outside of the department to look at that? And you know, there could be accusations that this was edited or things like that. So who outside of the Bureau, because I have concerns of if it's just an internal process, right? Like who's auditing either that data or oversight of someone outside of the Bureau of that data and knowing that those videos were deleted, or if there's a question of, you know, the authenticity of the video, or was there other pieces of it? Who is looking at that?
Well, for the authenticity and the editing, when the video is saved to the server or cloud, whatever, and then we pull it down to do the redaction piece, the original video is still saved. So you're not editing the original, you're editing a copy that will go out. So that original is always there to be compared and looked at to make sure that no changes were made. For the auditing piece, that's an interesting question, and I think that's something I'm going to need to talk with my leadership about how audits will happen.
Yeah, I think just for trust, transparency, I think it would be great to have an outside group that is overseeing that and also looking at those records and saying, okay, here's all the files that we said were deleted. Someone's comparing that list or looking into it that has more, you know, has technical looks at the records, just because, you know, obviously we just got to go off your word, which is great, but I think in the idea of oversight and transparency, I think it would be great to have an outside group look at that.
Okay.
Michelle, and then just to go over that list again, Sharon, Andrew, Adam, and then the gentleman up here. And I'm going to cap it at that so you can get back up there on the list.
Yeah. So you said, Tammy, early in your comments, you said that footage is released when it's in the public's best interest. Like, who defines best interest? Like, what are the parameters? What are the guidelines that define when it's in the public's best interest or when it's not?
The law doesn't state, but talking with the PPB leadership as well as the district attorney, it would go through the same records request process that it does now. So if you had interest in a specific video or the news had interest in a specific video, it would go through the same process as releasing a regular report does now.
Okay. But there's not, but I'm sorry, but there's nothing specific that we can refer to that says this passes the qualifications for public best interest? There's nothing
There's
that,
nothing specific, no.
and
So
so,
it'll be a discussion between probably the records manager and the district attorney and, I don't know, the city attorney. It will be a decision based on the normal process for releasing a report or text messages or other things that get released. It'll go through that same process.
Sharon?
I appreciate this conversation about body-worn cameras, but I need a clarification.
Okay.
It feels assumptive as though the Portland Police Association is going to agree. Portland's had the experience of this model trial being rejected, and so I guess I'm asking if I've heard correctly. You mentioned that the process of where it goes and how it moves to the point of presenting to the city council, if I heard correctly. You turned to leadership and they talked about the various steps. One of them was the police association. So I guess my question is, what learnings from past experience when they rejected it for a number of reasons, from technology, just something was always something. What about those learnings might have assisted in moving this forward? Because a number of other cities are trying it. And so that's what a number of public folks are asking, what makes you think this time would be different? And you might know something that makes it more possible.
I think this time it's going to be different because we waited for a lot of other agencies to get their policies out and kind of go through the lessons learned that I'm hoping we can skip by learning those lessons from other agencies. The PPA is aware we're doing this again, and we've had discussions, and they have actually said, well, look at this policy. This one looks like a good negotiation, or this one. And they've actually looked at a couple, and I think they're willing to come to the table with a greater appreciation of the other agencies that have gone before us and done this. But ultimately, what we come up with, they will have to look at and make a recommendation on their own. And I don't want to state that they're going to be all in on what we decide because it hasn't been decided yet. We haven't written anything. There is that old version, but we're not using that. We're starting from scratch and trying to write it based on the current technology and the current Portland community environment and what's best for Portland. And so they will look at it and hopefully come to the realization that we are basing it off of tried and true methods that other agencies have gone through to come up with a viable policy for us.
Great. We're going to go to Andrew, then Adam.
Thank you again for being here, Tim. Question about what the Bureau is looking for in the pilot, what the measurements are that you're looking at, what's going to determine whether or not it's successful. Speak to that.
Sure. For the pilot, we're not only testing the equipment because the vendors have different capabilities. Some of the cameras can see different in low light situations. Some of them have better durability for when they're dropped. Some have better weather resistance. We're going to be testing all the technical aspects of the top two vendors that we choose. But we'll also be testing out the policy that we write. Did we cover everything? Did we miss anything that needs to be addressed? As well as we have we're working on getting a research partner, and we're still in the discussion phase of the agreement, but a research partner that will do some research before we do the pilot and then as we're going through the pilot, so we will have some data to present, some initial data, because honestly, in my opinion, it's going to take 2-3 years of us having these cameras to really gather, does it make a difference in complaint reduction or use of force reduction or civility or any of the other things that other agencies have looked at. But we'll have at least some initial data on surveys from not only the community but the officers on what their perceptions are of how this program or the cameras are going to help things. And then after the pilot, hopefully some data on if anything changed in that very short period of time. And then my intention is to carry that through and have them do another look about a year after we have fully implemented the cameras, and have them come back and do that same data collection to see what the differences are. But honestly, in something like this, and I am not a researcher, and I dreaded writing my thesis for my master's, the research data gathering piece is not something that you're going to conclusively say it's totally worth it after like a year of having these on the street. I honestly think it's going to take, 2, 3, 4, even up to 5 to really gather the data every year and see what that change is. But there is a plan for that.
Very good, thanks.
Okay. Adam is up next.
So, Tammy, you spoke earlier about reviewing officers' professional standards, regarding their use of the body cam, and you also said that 80% of the footage isn't reviewed. So, my question is basically, is there going to be reviewing of the conduct even when there is no internal investigation of whatever happened on said day with said case? Or is the Bureau going to be making sure the officers are keeping their body cams on when they need to be and off, even if nothing actually occurs and there is no investigation?
That's part of the policy question. One of the things we're asking at all these community meetings is, when should supervisors be allowed to view the video? Should they be allowed to view it only when there's a complaint so they can resolve the complaint? Or should they do random reviews to make sure everyone's following the policy, or to see if there's any training lessons learned we can garner and put into training? That's one of the things we're going to have to determine as we write this policy, as to when the supervisors can look at it, what the purpose of them looking at it is for. And if you look at, there's a policy comparison on my website. We kind of threw everything in a very large spreadsheet. But I took out word for word of what a variety of these policies do. And some allow officers to, or supervisors, to only view it when there's a complaint. And then some have supervisors mandatorily reviewing at least one video per each officer that works for them per each work shift, whether that be a week or 2 weeks. The only problem with that is that's a lot of time on the officers. I mean, videos can be like an hour, and if you have 6 officers that you are the supervisor for, that's 6 hours of video you have to view in a period of time. So there are give and takes to how it's done, and all that's going to have to be nailed down in a policy, and that's why that's one of the questions we're asking.
Great. We're gonna go to the front. Could you say your name one more time?
Robert West.
Robert.
And I just want, okay, I just wanted to let you know that I went up to Seattle a few times, and all their officers carry body cams. And I asked one of the officers, what happens if you turn your body cam off? And he says they're terminated.
Okay.
They no longer have a job with Seattle PD if they turn their body cams off.
Next question. Okay, we're gonna go here. Did you already have your hand up? Yeah, you did. Okay, we're gonna go here to Patrick, and then we're gonna go back there.
One question I have is recognizing that Andrew wears this jacket, and it's a jacket that's very recognizable, and we all have faces that are very recognizable, to the point where on Facebook I can say, yeah, Andrew, I know him. Will facial recognition software be used in any way, shape, or form
No,
around
that's
this?
part of one of the laws, that this will not be tied to facial recognition in any way.
What about any other sort of recognition software, like the fact that, I wear a smiley face t-shirt and it's very
I
recognizable?
believe the law only talks about facial recognition.
Right. Back here. Yep.
I think it's only facial.
So my name is David Keith Davis, Multnomah County Cop Watch. I wanted to say that the police are already actually filming at protests. whether there's a crime going on or not. So the fact that these rules are supposedly put in place to not film at protests with body cameras unless there's something going on, I'm wondering why why that's not implicated already with the digital forensics unit. And also, another thing I noticed recently is a Nazi cop, Nazi fetishist, Mark Kruger, is in charge of the digital forensics, I guess, since that's part of the forensics